Hello everybody, welcome to the American Dream. Today we're going to talk about the prevention of sexual abuse. We have with us Senator Joan Lovely, who has filed legislation in this area, Jetta Bernier, who is a trainer of trainers and does a fabulous job. Birgitta Damon and I tracked her down last year, and she does a wonderful job in this whole area of sexual abuse and training people to how to prevent it. We've had a few shows on this, on prevention, also on detection and treatment. But today, I think we're going to try to focus on prevention. Why don't you start, Jetta? You're the pro here. You're becoming nationally famous.
Well, this is an infamous topic, obviously.
Yes, it is.
But we are concerned about the extent of child sexual abuse across the Commonwealth as well as the country. You know, it's very clear that even groups like the American Medical Association have called this a silent, violent epidemic. It is prevalent across our communities, in our homes, in our schools, in our youth-serving organizations. And so we have a responsibility as parents and as concerned adults to get in front of this problem and begin to educate people about the extent of it and what we can do specifically to prevent it from ever occurring. That really should be our goal.
Right. Okay. So why don't kids report it? I've met with several women who were abused as children, and they were afraid, they were ashamed, they didn't know it was wrong. I mean, there are a whole variety of reasons. And then they repress it. They put it in the back of their mind, and they don't talk about it or think about it. And then something happens later in life. In their 20s or 30s, they get in a car accident, or a parent dies or something, and then it brings it all to the forefront. And the symptoms are unbelievable. The post-traumatic stress disorder, nightmares, flashbacks, anxiety, depression, agoraphobia. It goes on and on and on, that people are suffering silently. They stay home. They can't work. So I think you're right to focus. We're all right to focus on prevention. You said something in one of your training sessions that was quite notable, and that is that sometimes when somebody gets caught being the abuser, they're allowed to move on. Okay, look, this is embarrassing. We don't want anybody to know about it. It's shameful. We don't want the city or the town to know. We don't want anybody to know. So we're going to let you move on. We'll give you a recommendation. And why don't you tell that story? And
well, you know, we know that that dynamic happened during the clergy sexual abuse crisis.
Right.
We know that often priests who are engaged in sexual abuse or misconduct were simply moved to other parishes without even notifying the chief priest there that this was a possibility.
The buzzword then was scandal. We don't want to have a scandal in the church.
Right, exactly. But it's interesting because right now the issue of child sexual abuse within schools by educators and other school personnel is becoming the next crisis. Yeah. You know, some national reports have indicated that 1 in 10 children are reporting that they've been involved in some kind of inappropriate sexual contact with someone in their school, anytime from grade K through 12. And in a third of cases, it's a teacher or coach. So we know that the problem of sexual abuse is happening, again, as I said, across our communities. But what we've identified is this practice of passing the trash. We know that in the same way that happened in the church, we're seeing that these institutions don't want to be seen as involved in this issue. They don't want their reputation to be soiled. They don't want to lose money that might come in through fundraising. They really just want to put it under the rug.
Right.
And so we have seen schools in which they have entered into confidentiality agreements with this individual. And basically it's been a decision that, you know, you just move on, and when you go to the next school, we'll give you a good recommendation, and it'll all be kept hush-hush.
And there was a notable case that you talked about.
Yes, and in fact, you know, in the state of Pennsylvania, there was a particular case of a principal who was involved in sexually abusing a number of little 6- and 7-year-old boys who were too young to testify. And so the school decided they wanted to get rid of him, and so they entered into this agreement. That individual went on to West Virginia, where he continued to teach and became the principal of a school there. And several years later, he murdered a little 12-year-old boy, Jeremy Bell, in a fishing cabin in the woods. And when the investigators looked back into the history of this perpetrator, they found that he had been engaged in this behavior all the way back when he was a teacher and principal in the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania very quickly said, we will not allow this to happen. We have blood on our hands. And so they developed a piece of legislation that would create stricter screening protocols when prospective new people are looking to have a job in a school. Senator Lovely has included in her omnibus bill some specific provisions around passing the trash, which we hope will pass along with other important provisions of her bill.
Okay, I want to bring this down to Lynn for a minute.
Sure.
Judge Deva, who's now deceased, was a terrific human being and a great judge. He told me that after 17 years on the bench, he came to the conclusion that the most dangerous place in the world for a child was in the home because of all the abuse that he saw. So last year, Birgitta and I and some other people from Lynn started, we contacted you and we started doing some training. Birgitta, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we did and what we can do?
Okay. Lynn Economic Opportunity.
Excuse me 1 minute. Birgitta, for those of you who don't know, is the Chief Executive Officer of Lynn Economic Opportunity.
And we are a community action agency, and we operate a Head Start, Early Head Start, and early education child care programs. And so we felt that this was very important to educate parents, our own educators, and others in Lynn, other child-serving organizations, to train them about how to prevent child sexual abuse from occurring. And we contacted Jetta, as you said, and we engaged in 2-day training. We had over 30 people attend and be trained, and we've gone on and done some trainings within the City of Lynn Public Schools, also participated in the training. And we see this as a real opportunity to educate parents, educators, and just the general public about child sexual abuse and this idea that stranger danger, and that's where this child sexual abuse is happening. And as you just said, that Judge Dever had discovered that one of the most dangerous places for children is in the home or with other close family members. And what struck me the most about the training was around communication and opening the door with your child when your child says something, and it may be something innocuous, but to ask further questions of that child to determine, why do you feel uncomfortable with this particular teacher or this babysitter? What is happening? If the child were to say, I don't feel comfortable being left with Mary today, and ask, well, why do you feel that way? And the child may divulge something, and then you should obviously explore it further. But children don't make these things up, and that was very striking to me. And I that's what the one thing, if I talk about it at a party or a dinner with a friend, that's the one point that I try to enforce, is when your child is saying something, or your niece or your nephew, ask those questions, because there may be something there. There may not be, but there may be something there.
And sometimes the child is actually saying exactly what happened, and people refuse to hear it.
That is
They
right.
don't believe it, so they just move on. So Senator Lovely, by the way, she's a powerful woman, so you should get to know her. She's the Assistant Majority Leader. She's Vice Chair of Ways and Means,
Assistant Vice
Senate
Chair of Ways and Means, Assistant Majority Whip.
Okay,
And
so-
I chair Children and Families.
Okay,
With disabilities.
so that's good enough. I
Yeah.
mean, you're on your way.
Yeah.
Are you going to be Senate President someday?
Oh, I don't know about that.
She's also an attorney, so she's well prepared to serve in the Senate. So you have sponsored legislation in this area, as Jetta says. Can you tell us a little bit about your legislation?
Sure. So I decided to do an omnibus bill this year. What that particularly means is it's got a lot of pieces to it. I had done individual bills my first 2 terms in, and this is an awareness piece. This is such an uncomfortable subject that people just shut down. I even have colleagues that shut down. They don't want to talk about it. It doesn't occur in their world, but it does. And so we need to make sure that people are aware. And so I really look at this piece of legislation as an awareness piece. As Jetta had said, there's a part of passing the trash where an educator, administrator, school employee, whoever it might be in a school setting or a youth serving organization, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCA, whatever it might be, if there are youth in that organization, if there has been allegations, substantiated allegations of sexual misconduct, then, and that teacher is dismissed, then they're going to move on to another school system. We not want the next school system to be able to know. And not just in our Commonwealth. There's a piece in here that it will go cross borders so that we can make sure that if people are moving on with the exact example that you used, that someone's not going to move on to a new system with a clean slate, that if they've been accused of and it's substantiated of sexual misconduct, then we want to make sure they don't move on.
What standard would you use to say it's been substantiated? I mean, obviously an admission by the party would.
Well, that would be
cover
absolutely.
It, yeah.
You know, there's
witnesses.
Witnesses.
Yeah.
Some type of evidence that it's not just an allegation.
Right.
It's
okay.
been investigated, right. And it's substantial enough that that there's a dismissal and that there's a reporting requirement.
Okay.
That's what we're looking for.
Why did you get involved in this area?
Well, you know, I do have a history. I will tell you that I am a sexual abuse survivor. As a 6-year-old, we had a maternal uncle come live with the family, with my family, my parents and my 4 brothers and sisters. And he sexually abused myself and 2 siblings over the course of about a year. He was actually moved on from his prior living situation. It was the 1960s. It wasn't really, you know, you just moved people on. My parents took him in with open arms. It was my mother's little brother. He was in his early 20s, and that ensued. I will tell you, when you talk about repression, I actually did have panic disorder starting in my late teens and early 20s. And it wasn't until I had my first daughter and she turned 6 years old that it flooded completely back, out of nowhere. Didn't anticipate it, but here it came. At that time, I went to the district attorney and said, is it too late for me to press charges? It was. The statute of limitations had expired long before, and so there wasn't anything that I could do about it. And then I found myself in the state senate. And I have to tell you, for my first term, I didn't touch the subject. I was trying to feel comfortable about talking about it publicly. We did some legislation in my first term where we extended the statute of limitations for a civil suit to the age of 55. I happen to be 56. So I was not able to participate or take any action in that. But I voted on that with the confidence that other people would be able to. And even though I missed it, others hopefully will not miss it and they'll take advantage of it. So now we come to this piece of legislation where we know that teachers are going to observe incidents of some misconduct by perhaps another teacher. We had our hearing back in July, and there was a survivor there who shared her story, very powerful story. As a 5th grader, she started to be groomed by an assistant principal, where he would remove her from her gym class and was sexually promiscuous with her. It was total misconduct. Would invite other men in the school setting, in the school. And it wasn't until a new gym teacher, when the administrator came to get her, said no. Now, as a 5th grader, you would think that she would know, but he groomed her. There's a lot of grooming that goes on where the abuser will groom the young person, whether it's a young child or a teenager, and that extra attention is wanted by that person, but it's totally inappropriate. So a piece of this bill is actually to raise the age of consent in a high school setting, public and private schools, so that currently the age of consent is 16 in Massachusetts. If you are enrolled in a high school, we want to raise the age to 19, only in the high school setting, only between a student and administrator or employee or teacher. Because we want to, it's a civil penalty and or a criminal penalty. If you're a special education student, it's 22 because you're in school until you're 22 years old. We have a Romeo and Juliet clause in there so that student to student is held harmless. We don't want to interfere, even though we're not condoning sexual relationships between students, but we don't want to criminalize it either. So we know this is something big that we want to tackle. We think it's completely appropriate because we're trying to, again, chill any type of inappropriate sexual conduct between someone who's in the position of authority, like a teacher or an administrator, and a student.
By the way, we're not picking on teachers.
We are not.
But this is for children, and it goes across the board. The people who engage in sexual abuse can come from any profession.
Right.
But you're very brave to come forward and tell your story because it's going to make it easier on other people to do the same and make it easier for people like Jetta and Birgitta to train people because there are homes where mothers and fathers just aren't paying attention. I mean, they just, they think life goes on. And
well, it's like I said, it's such an uncomfortable subject that people do shut down. They say this does not happen in my world, and then it does. So this is an awareness piece. We want to be able to, again, through the training, to be able to, this is what you're looking for. We're actually increasing the list of mandated reporters for like professional tutors, professional coaches, volunteer coaches. And again, just an awareness piece. I don't want to chill people that would go into these professions. But I mean, their teachers and administrators are already mandated reporters for abuse and neglect, and this would be an added awareness piece.
By the way, Jetta puts out a lot of materials, but there's two that if you're interested in getting them, let us know. You can talk to Birgitta at Leo, and one of them is Sexual Abuse, Safe Child Standards in Massachusetts, and the other one is Straight Talk About Child Sexual Abuse. And I recommend that you get them if you want them because it helps to increase awareness.
And Jim, if anyone is interested in knowing more about the issue and wants to get access to these materials, they can go to enoughabuse.org, and there's just a plethora of information there, downloadable documents and all kinds of information for people to take action.
Tell us about that link that you were talking to me about this morning.
We're constantly looking for ways to engage the public. Not everyone has the ability to come to a free workshop in their community for any number of reasons. And so we've developed something called the Pledge to Prevent campaign. It is expected that we will launch this officially in April, which is Child Abuse Prevention Month. We're collaborating with the World Childhood Foundation, which is a New York City-based philanthropy group. And we are going to do a national launch. We're basically going to say to people, you need to take a stand and show your hand. Basically, enough. When you go to the site, and you can go to the site now, even though it hasn't been formally launched nationally, you will be asked to take a picture of yourself, declaring enough, upload it, and then take a look at one of 25 different pledges. Are you a learner? You don't know much about the issue, but you want to learn a lot more. Are you an educator? You know something about it, and now you want to tell other people about it. You can be a safe community promoter, somebody who wants to go into their school, into their rec department, or some other place in the community to say, do we have these policies? What are we doing about training? Or you can be a movement builder, in which case we're going to say to you, here's some pieces of legislation that you need to go to your elected officials about and ask them, do we have this in our state? Should we be doing this?
How do you find that link?
It's basically pledgetoprevent.org.
Okay.
The thing about it is that when people take a pledge, they immediately get an email that says, here are 3 links that you can go to now that will help you fulfill your pledge. So we're giving people very concrete things they can do. It's not about just awareness. Awareness is, everyone has an awareness now that this is a big issue in our country, particularly now with the sexual assault issues going on. We need to take that awareness and move it to education so people really have the facts, and then we need to take it to action. It's all about making a difference.
Okay. What are we going to do in Lynn? What would you suggest, the two of you suggest to Birgitta that we do in Lynn?
Well, as I was mentioning,
upcoming months?
As I was mentioning earlier, you know, I think organizing a group of concerned citizens who can assist you to identify what I call gigs, you know, where in our community should there be this kind of training? Is it the members of a book club? Is it a church group? Is it some kind of after-school program? Sometimes those who train don't have the ability and the time to go out and try to find these opportunities. So we need to bring people together because everybody can play a role. Everybody has connections. So I think that may be one piece of it. The Pledge to Prevent, I think, would be a great campaign for the city. I can see billboards in Lynn, you know, have you pledged to prevent? Go online, make a difference today. Very concrete. We could even identify a certain number, you know, by the end of the year, you know, we're going to have 5,000 pledges to prevent in the city of Lynn. We could do that. There are people out there who want to be part of the solution. We just need to give them something to attach themselves to, and I think the Enough Abuse campaign can be that, you know, that guide for them. So that's some ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds great. There are so many community organizations across every city and town, so opportunities to be able to talk to people and maybe put this as a part of their agenda going forward. I think it's a great idea.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And of course, they need to support Senator Lovely's legislation, Senate 295, you know, contacting members of the Joint Committee on Education or your local educator or your local elected official, rather, and saying to them, do you know about this piece of legislation? You know, this is something I want you to support. We've got to make sure our community gets behind this. So there's a lot of different roles people can play.
Okay.
And if organizations in Lynn are interested, or individuals are interested in learning more and being trained and bringing a group together, we at LEO are prepared and ready to host a training, to facilitate a training. And I think a big piece of why people are afraid of the issue is, well, what if somebody divulges to me that they have been abused? And the training does give you steps, action steps, that if someone were to come to you, how to react. And one of the other pieces that Jetta had included in her training was the fact that when somebody discloses that they have been abused, a big piece of the healing is the reaction of the person to whom they've disclosed. If that person has a receptive and listens to them, they're much more likely to not have, I mean, there's still obviously going to be trauma, but it's just, it's better for them if so to have that information, because you never know that a close friend of yours or somebody can come and disclose that information, and wouldn't it be better to be prepared and to know how to react, as opposed to just being surprised and then you go back home and think, oh, that wasn't a good reaction. This prepares you, and it gives you a lot of information and education about what child sexual abuse is, how to prevent it, and then if somebody discloses to you, what the best steps are in handling that information once it's given to you.
That's good information.
Because, you know, children are often so afraid to tell because of all the shame and the guilt that you mentioned earlier, Jim. And so when the child finally is at a point where they can share this with someone, the last thing they need is for someone to kind of freak out and say, oh my God, are you sure?
Yeah, right.
So, you know, what we need to do, first of all, is say, you know, you're the adult, keep calm. Say to the child, I believe you, because children rarely lie about this. You were brave to tell me. Give them some confidence that they did the right thing. And then just say to them, we will do everything we can to keep you safe. And I think that is a reassuring first response, you know, that the child really needs to get.
Okay, so how do we, the steps before that, how do we prevent it from happening? Do everything that you say.
You know, if I had a nickel to put my bet on a particular strategy, it would be for schools and youth organizations to look at their current code of conduct and to figure out, is this detailed enough? Does it simply say, you know, thou shalt not be sexually inappropriate with a child? or does it identify specific behaviors that should be prohibited within that environment?
Where would one get a model code of conduct?
We have developed, as part of the Enough Abuse campaign, a number of documents. We have a few called boundary violating behaviors that parents, schools, and students should know about and avoid.
So we can get them from you?
Absolutely, yes. And we've developed some for private schools as well, because the private schools are in a particularly difficult position, because some of the behaviors that you would not find appropriate in a school are totally considered normal in a private school. For example, we say a teacher should never give a child a ride in their car or loan their car. Well, if you go to a private school, the faculty often have kids in their car. They take them into town or on various activities. So the beauty of private schools is that they have that close mentoring relationship. That's why parents want their kids to go to these institutions, that one-on-one, that sense that I'm going to have someone to pay special attention. That also increases the risk, however, that someone might use that relationship in a way that is inappropriate. So private schools are challenged, you know, with this, and so we've worked with a number of them across the state, and have developed boundary violating behaviors that we encourage private schools to take a look at as they build their code of conduct. If we could do that, Jim, and if we could have everyone aware of what behaviors are not allowed, we wouldn't have to wait to report someone after the fact. We could say to a colleague, you know, don't do this, or that's not appropriate, without having to call them a pedophile. So I think we need to really make sure we don't allow behaviors that could escalate to sexual assault.
Okay. We have Jared Nicholson, who's on the Lynn School Committee, coming on the show next month, and I'm going to try to have a model code of conduct for him to present to the Lynn School
Let's do
Committee.
it.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Senator Lovely, thank you very much. You're a real hero.
Thank you.
Jetta, you're the best.
Thank you.
And Birgitta, we love you. You do a great job for the city of Lynn and Lynn Economic Opportunity. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
You're so
Thank
welcome.
you.